Dylan Self with JTech. Today we are going to talk about a torque converter. Normally when it comes to your torque converter, whenever it goes bad in the car, what you're going to do is you're going to pull the trans, pull the torque converter out, send it to be cored, get a new one, slap it in the car, put the trans back in, call it a day. For this we want to basically see how a torque converter works, so we have this special one that has been cut open so that we can see the internals. Pretty much, I got you looking at the back side or the engine side of the torque converter. This would be your transmission side. Pretty much your transmission input shaft will go through here. You'll see on your input shaft, you'll see a hole in the very tip of the input shaft, one smaller spline and then one bigger spline. That'll come into play later. So when we take it apart, you pretty much have your back part that will bolt into your flex plate, right on, that's bolted to the crank on the engine. So this will get the power from the engine. What sits up against this is what we call a lockup plate. It's got this little strip of material. It's kind of like clutch material or brake pad material. Pretty much when your engine reaches up to like cruising speed and it's nice at higher speeds, that little hole in the tip of your transmission input shaft is going to push some fluid down, and it's going to let this lockup plate, which we can actually take this one off, it'll actually let this lockup plate push outwards up against here, making the torque converter spin one-to-one with the crankshaft of the engine. It does have a small, almost like a manual transmission clutch in it. Take up some of the shock and all that fun stuff. Getting away from the lockup plate, now we have our very intricate parts. This right here is our turbine. This turbine, it's got splines right here. Remember the splines I told you on the shaft? You got the smaller splines? Well, the smaller splines will spline into this. This will spin freely with the input shaft of the transmission. On the inside here, we've got two sets of vanes and a big opening here. The vanes are all set at like a certain angle to control stall and pressure, and pretty much the fluid will move through this and it gets transferred from we have our front part, which is our impeller, and then in the middle we have our stator. Pretty much the fluid, as it goes through, it's going to get power from the back part that's on the flex plate. That's going to transfer through the housing to our impeller, and the impeller is going to turn and build the pressure on the fluid. In between those two, you have a stator, which the stator has a one-way clutch on it, which means if I try and turn it this way, it'll let the center and the outside turn separately, but if you turn it back, it locks in and makes it spin one direction. As it sits, which way does this thing go? As it spins together, when you get to your higher RPMs and your more power, it's gonna lock in and let it spin all together, all one speed. And our impeller and our turbine, they have two separate styles of vanes. See, this one has it's more of an aggressive vane style, where this one's a bit more calm, but they are opposite directions. So they want to spin in the opposite directions. What our stator does is, when it gets locked in, is actually letting everything spin in the same direction, transferring the fluid pressure from our impeller through our stator into our turbine that is locked to our input shaft, multiplying the torque from the engine and locking it up, getting you down the road quick. That's pretty straightforward. I said your input shaft has two sets of splines. Your smaller spline goes right here into your turbine, whereas your bigger will go right in here into the face of the torque converter. And you can't see it on this one because it's got this big block here in my way, but it has these little notches on the throat of the torque converter, we'll call it, that goes around, and it actually locks in so that as it's all spinning, it is staying together and it's not going to fly apart, and it's going to spin how you want it, where you want it, and when you want it. So it's pretty straightforward. I mean, You got your impeller, your stator, your turbine, your lockup plate, and then the back side of your housing. And like I said before, this is something you're never actually going to tear apart in the field unless you get certified and want to start building torque converters, but you'd have to be crazy. And so this is normally going to be all welded in one piece. You're never going to tear this thing apart. But that's basically the gist of a torque converter. Thanks.